Okay, here we are. We are here. Where are we? We're in Brigham City. I have to keep telling myself that after 2 months. So where am I? What? Yes, in fact, this superb wildlife photography you see on the screen was taken by my superb wildlife photographer wife. And it's actually not just a picture. It's a movie. Yeah, and it actually has a slow motion section. Here's the slow motion section, because you want to see the grace and wonder of turkeys. And you wonder why the breast meat on a turkey is so big. They have to flap wings that are huge. So there's your wildlife photography for the morning. Yeah. Yeah, that's your shadow on the left. I didn't realize that. Yeah. So we are in Oklahoma City at a place called Awesome Acres, Pacas and Piers, and it's alpacas and Great Pyrenees dogs. So they raise both of them, and they let us actually park our RV on their farm and gave us a tour of the alpacas and why some alpacas are great and some others aren't, and why some of them are valuable and why some others aren't. I'm an alpaca expert now. And the turkeys and the ducks. Yeah, we just had a great time. It was a wonderful opportunity because Dorothy found a service called Harvest Host where different places like farms will let you park their RV on their property for free because they got space to park, as long as what you do is you also buy some of the stuff they're selling. So I think originally this was for small farms and for farms that didn't want to just sell their produce at a farmer's market. You can actually attract people to your farm and buy it right there. So they'll set up a farmer's market at the farm, and then you have all these captive customers coming in just to park their RVs. So we did a lot of that, and it's a very popular system. So that's what these folks did. Really wonderful people. It is really, really great. So we're going to talk about Thanksgiving today. Okay. But my thinking on Thanksgiving has shifted a lot just in the last 3 or 4 weeks, because I've been thinking about it a lot. So I'm going to see if I can drag you into that shifted thinking, because frankly, when I think of Thanksgiving, I have to go back to this picture right here. Do you know which one's me? You can tell. I'm the middle of 3 boys, and so my folks sat us in birth order right there. I am the tannest one. For some reason, my brothers have both very fair skin, and I, even in the middle of the winter time, have darker skin than my brothers. And they were both shorter than me by almost a head. So, when we take large family pictures when we were all growing up, there was mom and dad, 5'6", 5'6", my brothers, 5'7", 5'7", and Jim, who's like 6'1". So the joke is always, he must have been adopted. He doesn't look like anyone in the family. So this is actually in 1957. Yeah, 1957. That's my mom back there, my 2 brothers. And so I was thinking about Thanksgiving because there's a turkey, but this is actually not a Thanksgiving picture. If you slide over to the other side, if you look at those candles over there on the left, they're kind of darker. Well, black and white, it's hard to tell, but a darker candle is red. So red, and if you see there's like a white fluffy wax around the top of it. So that my mom used to do this every year. She would get these big fat red candles, and then she'd get clear white wax, and then you'd melt it, and then you'd froth it up with a mixer until it's all frothy, and then you dab it around the edges of your candles. So this is actually Christmas. This isn't Thanksgiving, which made me think, as I was thinking about this, is that at Thanksgiving and Christmas is about gifts, and Thanksgiving has something to do with gifts. So we're going to tie those together today in a divine kind of way and talk about that. But for instance, if we keep this going, at Christmas time, you get gifts, right? Now, when I was a kid, we were so focused on the gift, so excited about the gift, and you see this gift, wrapped, and you're waiting to see what's inside of it. And of course, finally, Christmas morning comes, you wrap these suckers open, you get them all open, you see what's inside, they delight you, or it's underwear and socks and it doesn't. But usually you're so excited, and you open them up, and then what is it your mother says immediately after you open it up? No, you need, what do you say? Thank you. Right. So that was something you always had to tell kids to say, especially if the gift came like from grandma or something like that. And you're totally obsessing on the gift now that it's opened and you're just so excited about that. And you forget about the fact that someone gave you this gift out of love. So you got to say thank you. So I remember this taunt from my mom came all the time, all the way through Christmas. What do you say? What do you say? It was always in that kind of tone. People say English is not a tonal language. What do you say? And usually your heart was not in the response. It was like, I do that because it's compulsory, right? I mean, you'd always do a deep breath. Thank you. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Grandma. Okay? It was a compulsory kind of thing. So as we were coming into Thanksgiving this year, I was thinking about this whole thing and how I've been schooled by my parents, mostly my mom, to say thank you. And so I think that's a pretty shallow understanding of what thankfulness is all about. So let's deepen it. That's what I'm going to do today. Let's deepen what thankfulness is. This isn't just your mom saying, what do you say? Thank you, because, that's what you do. So my opening thing is, it seems as though thankfulness, saying thank you, is kind of a courtesy, right? This is how I start this thing. It's sort of a courtesy. It's something you do, like there's a handful of little courtesy things you do that as you become adults you do. Welcome, thank you, please, all that kind of stuff. It's a courtesy. So if we start from that baseline, we all, think about this. Thankfulness, from that perspective with gifts, is really, it's a courtesy of the considerate. So if you're a considerate person, you say thank you, right? If you're a considerate person, you say please. There's a whole bunch of considerate kind of things you say. And so I start with thankfulness as being just an issue of the courtesy you show when you grow up and you're a considerate person. But biblically, it's much more profoundly deep than that. Profoundly. In fact, it's shockingly deep. And let me show you what kind of nudged me out of this kind of considerate realm, this soft considerate, to something that's much more, I'll say, cutting edge. I mean, really, this shook me. This is one of my understandings in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to come up with two different stages of my understanding as I deepened on what thankfulness really is. And it came from this passage. Now, we touched on this passage last week. This is the opening verses of the gigantic tome that Paul wrote in Romans. Just a remarkable discussion about the fact that everyone has sinned. You see that especially as he builds up to Romans 3, that there's two Adams, one that brought sin to the world, another Adam that took sin out of the world, that atoned for sin, that's Jesus. Talks about what grace is, talks about what faith is, right? So Romans is a big deal. So in his opening sentences, now this is chapter 1 of Romans, he says something that he doesn't really defend. He says it like everyone understands this. So what he says, verse 18, we touched on this, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Talk about a shocker to open up a thing like Romans. He starts right off the top saying the wrath of God exists on mankind because of sin. Whoa! And then when you read that, if you're thinking about it, you ask yourself, so what about the uninformed people? What about all of mankind that has never been informed about who Jesus is? Maybe they've never been informed about the greatness of who God is, right? All those uninformed people. And I think Paul is thinking primarily of what about all those Gentiles outside of Judaism? A Hebrew person would understand who God is based on the Old Testament stories, based on, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. You would know that stuff. But what about the people who don't have that exposure? What about the ones who are uninformed? Is the wrath of God aimed at them? That's the question. And so he answers it immediately. In this very first chapter, he's wasting no time. What about the uninformed? Well, if you skip down just a little bit in Romans 1, and if we go down to verse 20, this is what he says, and this is what we looked at last week. God's invisible attributes, namely his eternal power, his divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. And now we talked about this last week as an alternative place instead of sticking your eyes, all the time on this thing, is there another place you can look where you can, that maybe might be more profitable? And Psalm 19 says, well, the heavens are displaying, who God is. You want to look at the heavens. So we looked at this last week in that sense. But from here, this is just a profound thing. For the uninformed, they really are not uninformed, because creation itself speaks enough about who God is. They're actually informed about who God is, because he says it right there. It's been clearly perceived since the beginning of the world. And what? In creation, you see the eternal power and divine nature of God. And so he says, an extraordinary next phrase, just shakes you off your feet, because they've seen nature, they understand God. And so when it comes to judgment, they're without excuse. I mean, that's earth-shaking. So those who don't know the stories of who God is, who Jesus is, who Moses is, who the Israelites are, still they'll be answerable to God, and without excuse, because the message of nature is just that clear. And that's an astonishing assertion. And he does not spend 3 or 4 chapters trying to defend it. He just says it like, we all know this. We all know this. In a modern society right now, when we talk so much about the innovations of mankind, we don't think too much about the innovations of creation, although we do from time to time. But we're more consumed with, what technology can do. It's just things are advancing so fast. But in ancient times, they would look at creation, and all the pagan cultures, even the ones outside of Israel, the pagan cultures will look at nature and they'd say, well, clearly there's a God, because he made this. And clearly we benefit from this God. So if we want to benefit from this God and have him continue to bring rain to our crops, we need to sacrifice to these gods in ignorance, and we need to make them happy with us, So there is a common sense of understanding because of nature that you see this in all cultures. There must be a God, and this God is beneficial to us in ways that we hope we can influence, but we're just not sure he's in charge of things. So this is what Paul's saying. This is common knowledge. To us in these days, it's not really common knowledge. But follow my thinking here. He says that because of the exposure of the creation of the earth, but what that God had did. And remember, in Genesis 1, he would create parts of the creation, and the last phrase he said is, it is good. Well, that goodness of creation is still here, and it reflects God who's good. So it continues to testify, is what he's saying right here. It continues to testify about who he is. And so those who don't know about the stories of the Old Testament or about Jesus, they're without excuse. They know enough. They know enough. That just shakes me. And listen to this. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. They knew God. How? Well, Paul says through creation. And again, he does not spend a couple chapters defending this. This is like common knowledge during his time. They understand something about who God is. Enough, sufficient that they're without excuse. But this is where my thinking on thankfulness kind of went, what? Because look at what the condemnation issue is right here. Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. Or give thanks to him. Is that fair? I mean, they're uninformed. Well, actually, they're not uninformed, because he says right at the beginning of that phrase, they know God. They know God because of what they see in creation. So could it be that thanksgiving, thankfulness is more than just a politeness? Maybe it's something, I'll say, worse. Maybe it's something that's much more important. Maybe it's something that's much more at the center of things, because here he seems to say that the judgment of those who we would say is uninformed, but they're not because of creation, judgment is going to center around 2 things. About the fact that they're not giving thanks in the midst of this creation, and that they don't honor him. It actually is kind of a courtroom scene. And this is what I was thinking about, because this, as I read this again, which I've read many times, it troubled me. So are we saying that at judgment, there are people who will stand before the throne of judgment, and God will say, you're guilty of not honoring me as God and not being thankful. And a pagan whose heart is not loving towards God would say, well, thankful for what? I'm creating up this dialogue now. Thankful for what? Well, did you enjoy the sunsets? Did you enjoy those clear summer days? Did you enjoy the spectacular view of the mountains that you live next to? I mean, was there anything in your experience that you enjoyed? Well, yeah. Did you create that? Did that come from you? No. Where did it come from? You. You never thanked me for it. See? So now we're getting down to something that's fundamentally rebellious in mankind when thankfulness is not there. Because we have a creator who blessed us with good things in creation. And we never said, thank you, God, and we never honored the fact that God did this for us. Ellie Mae. Oxygen's good for us. Yeah. I can breathe today. Thank you, God. Yeah, I know. There are so many things. And this is what we want to delve into, because this thankfulness is more than just a polite consideration that I give to my grandmother when she gives me a gift. Thankfulness biblically cuts to the actual core of the rebellion issues of mankind. Really? Yes. So, let's explore this some. So remember, this is serious. The wrath of God is revealed against people who don't give thanks. I just shortened it up for you. That is not, thank you, Grandma. That is something much more profound. The wrath of God is revealed against those who don't give thanks and those who don't honor him. So there's that second thing too. Those go hand in hand. We're going to focus on the thanks part to see if we can kind of deepen our understanding of thankfulness. But these opening words of Paul's in his remarkable Romans writing, they stagger me. They stagger me. Now, I would feel better if I read this, and instead of this wrath coming because they don't give thanks, I'd feel better if he says, well, because they didn't worship me. That's not there. Or they didn't confess their sins to me. Or, a lot of things that we put more in the camp of salvation. But for these people who are informed, sufficiently informed through nature, it's because they're not giving thanks. That's remarkable to me. Yeah, Michael, what do you think? John 16? Yes. Yeah. He'll convince the world of sin. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's really true. Yeah.
So it's more than just they aren't paying attention to the one that's around them. The Holy Spirit is convincing and convicting.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah. And that's a good reference, because we're gonna tie that together from John 16, because there is this is serious stuff right here. We're talking about judgment in the opening the opening words of Romans, and that judgment is about the fact that mankind deliberately is not thankful and deliberately does not give God credit for the place. That staggers me. There will be no one at judgment who's with excuse. So let's deepen this a little bit. So what this brings me to is the fact that somewhere at judgment time, there's going to be like a courtroom judgment, and being thankless is going to be a crime, and it's going to be a crime against God. Now that just really remarkably broadened my understanding of thankfulness. It went away from thank you, Grandma, to oh no. Right? The biblical view of thankfulness is a cutting-edge core issue for all mankind. I just have never thought this before. I've just never thought this before. It's like what I tell people, it's like being a squatter on a landlord's property. And this property here is created by God, and he owns it. This was constantly what God would say to Israel when he brought him in the promised land. He says, look, this is my place. This is my land. I'm giving it to you, but this continues to be my land. You don't own this place. I'm letting you stay here. I provided this for you. Kind of like a husband, in ancient times, builds a house before he takes his wife, and they move into that. And she's always appreciative of the fact that he built this for her, and out of the gracious, loving kindness of his heart, it's there. And so she's appreciative. She's thankful for the fact of that. Well, that's kind of like this with this landlord idea. This earth is created by a landlord, and I like the word landlord because biblically it's quite appropriate. The earth has a landlord, and that's the God creator himself. He made this place. He made it good. And aren't we lucky, he said facetiously, aren't we lucky that at the fall in the Garden of Eden, God didn't take all the good parts of creation and turn them into nasty black gray things? He left creation the way it was. I mean, the goodness in how he created it, he left it there. Why? So that as a fallen mankind continues to move forward in its generations, in this place that the landlord made for us, we could do what he says we do. We could look at creation and go, this is a pretty nice place. And here we are as rebellious people who don't even give a rip about whether there's a God at all. And he still continues to bring sunsets and waterfalls and beautiful days and oxygen. Why? Why would he do that? Think about it, because we're going to ask that question in a couple minutes. So it's like being a squatter on a landlord's property or the creator's property. And it's as though mankind has been in this place that God created deliberately to reflect who he is, deliberately giving wonderfully good things in this place. And we've just squat there and said, yeah, whatever. And you know what mankind's excuse is? Mankind's excuse, I'll talk about that in a second. There is no landlord. And this whole landlord idea about the earth and the thanklessness, the ingratitude of mankind on this creation is really strongly a part of a parable he tells. And I show it here in Mark 12, verse 1. Go take a look at that as a parable that, when I say this landlord issue, you'll recognize instantly in that parable. And there's the other places it's in. It's in Matthew and Luke as well. But he's the landlord. And mankind fools himself into thinking, I have no one to give thanks to, because we're all accidents of evolution. We're accidents of a universe that, boy, aren't we lucky that when the Big Bang happened, it fell out the way it was because we have life. Pfft, boy, aren't we lucky? No. No, just to let you know, every time I say we're lucky, I'm being facetious, okay? No, God has designed this place to continue to remind mankind that there's a gracious and loving God who wants to delight you with what you see, with what you experience, what you have around you. He wants to delight you. But mankind says, well, there is no landlord, there is no creator, so I have no one to give thanks to. It just happened. Here we are. Aren't we lucky? The end. Or they convince themselves they're entitled to this place. And that's the squatter idea on the landlord stuff. So this staggers me when I think about it. At judgment, there are going to be people where God says to them, you lived in the most remarkable, powerful voice that speaks about who I am, my creation itself. Everything is good. Everything is good. You enjoyed it. You took everything you could in this wonderful creation, and you just never said thanks. I'm sorry, but you can't live with me in eternity. Wait. So could thanklessness, could ingratitude be a primary criteria at judgment? This is a thought that came to my mind as I'm thinking through this. Could that be it? And see, it goes together with what he said in Romans 1. Not only you don't thank him, but you don't even recognize him as God. You remember that part that's said on Romans 1? You don't acknowledge him as God. You don't acknowledge him as God, and so you're not thankful for what he's left here in terms of this incredible blessing of this place that reflects his goodness in every, he spoke, it happened, it's good. He spoke, it happened, it's good. And you just used it up and never gave the credit to where it came from. That kind of ingratitude, and we understand how gifts and thankfulness go, that kind of ingratitude is a fundamental scorn against the giver. That's why I'm thinking maybe ingratitude, thanklessness is a core judgment issue. And that's what he says in Romans 1, just in passing. The wrath of God is revealed against people because they wouldn't thank me and they wouldn't acknowledge that it was me that was the source of all the things that bless them. See how serious this is? See how core it is to the rebellion of mankind? See how powerful an indicator thanklessness is to the redeemed state of the person? If I don't see thankfulness in people's lives, then I realize that they don't remember that there's a landlord and they think that what they're enjoying, they're entitled to. And that is not the heart of a believer that follows God. At all. I am so delighted when I meet someone who's thankful in every circumstance. They understand something profound about the fact that this God has called them to himself, and they realize they don't deserve it. I mean, let's dig on that just a little bit more, because it is really characteristic. So in these things I was understanding, I realized here that thankfulness, or the absence of it, is actually going to be a criteria at judgment. This is so much different than just my courtesy to my grandmother. It's an indicator of the fallenness of mankind when there is no thankfulness. I deserve this. Everyone gets this. It's always been here. No. It's an indicator of fallenness when there is no thankfulness. I got to tell you, I mean, just personally, when I was thinking through this and praying through this staggered me. I have so undersold thankfulness. I mean, I just thought it's what adults do. They're thankful. But from God's perspective, who is our Father, when we have no thankfulness to our Father for the continual gifts that he gives to us, he is scorned. Let's keep digging. This just, it staggers me. Listen to this. So Luke 18:19, Jesus has this guy coming to him, asks his advice about the law and stuff like that. And he calls him good teacher. And so Jesus responds to that good teacher opening phrase. Jesus said to him, wait, why do you call me good? No one's good except God alone, which includes all of us. None of us are good. No, not one, it says in the Old Testament, and Paul repeats that in Romans. No one's good except God alone. 1 Timothy, when Paul writes Timothy 4:4, everything created by God is good. Now that reflects what we see in the Genesis creation account. God spoke this into existence, and he looked at it and said, that's good. So everything created by God is good, right? And then down here, James says, and this really puts a tip on it, James 1:17, every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father. So even to this very day, not at creation only, but into this very moment right now, the very moment that you and I live in, any good and perfect gift has its origin in God himself. Any good and perfect gift, its origin is God. So not only did he bring good to mankind in the creation and allowed the goodness of that creation to bless mankind, even in his fallenness, but even in his fallenness today, God continues to maintain good in the lives of people. Every good and perfect gift comes from the Father. I'd admonish you to read the rest of James 1:17, because he says, coming down from the Father of lights. What does that mean? So take a look at it. He uses an interesting metaphor when he mixes this idea quickly from the Father of lights. But it's very clear what he's saying here. The source of all good in the universe at the beginning of time and in your universe right now is God. Why? Because he's the only one that's good. He's the only one that's good. Now, you might argue and say, well, I've done some good things for people. Okay. Things that are like God in a sense. Yeah. But then you also do nasty stuff to people. I have. What that does is it allows us to appreciate what goodness on a God's level is like. We all appreciate what good is. We can define good. We know what good is. And why? Because we mingle with good versus bad versus evil. I mean, we see the contrast. I think that may be, and this is just Jim's speculation, that may be why God allows evil to exist without him squashing it on the place. Because the contrast from evil shows us what good is. Things that are beneficial for us, things that bless us, as opposed to things that destroy us and take us down. Good and evil, good and evil. So the source of all good is God himself, to this very minute. So what is our response to something like this? Well, our response, according to Deuteronomy 26, Moses says to the people of Israel, you shall rejoice in all the good that the Lord your God has given to you. That's your response, right? When you find out that you have been given a tremendous gift of something, you rejoice and you give thanks. Woo! Right? I've told this story many times because it still just sticks in my mind. When I was doing youth ministry in Spokane, I had a woman who was a volunteer in our youth group, an adult volunteer, And one time we were taking a whole bunch of kids over to Western Washington, and we were going to be going near Mount Rainier. If you know anything about Mount Rainier is this majestic cone. I mean, it's just almost this muscular looking big thing, and it has snow 12 months out of the year. And so here we were somewhere like in the middle of summer, July, and we're in this van. We haven't gotten our first glimpse of Mount Rainier because when you get close to it, there's just trees everywhere, so you can't see the horizon, and you're just stuck. And then in this one split moment, I'll never forget this. I'm driving, she's in the passenger seat. There's a bunch of rowdy kids in the back, and we turn the corner, and then there's Mount Rainier. I mean, and the breadth of it just fills the windshield, and it's got snow on it. And at that very moment, Pam lost her breath. She went, and she couldn't speak. Well, I had kind of a similar reaction. Great beauty, great majesty, great surprise, great awe about a creator who would stick something out there in the middle of the woods for us to appreciate. And as we came around the corner, we are made in such a way, because we're made in God's image, to respond to something like that. And it's awe. It's awe. And I remember thinking at the time, God did not have to do that. That was a total freebie, Jim. That was a total freebie. It was a gift out in the middle of the wilderness. I knew it was there. But when it came, we were both just breathless. God does not have to do these things. God left the goodness of his creation in place that it would turn our eyes toward it. So what do? What's our response? Rejoice. We give thanks. So someone who understands the source of this goodness, like you and I as redeemed people, someone who understands this comes from God, our immediate response is not only rejoicing about what we see and thanking, but we thank God for putting it there. This is a really important issue in thankfulness. Thankfulness, you need to thank not just for the gift, but thank through the gift to the giver. You thank through the gift to thank the giver. Because it's an issue on giving and thankfulness that we all understand, we all appreciate this. Because if you're a gift giver, you give gifts not because the people need the thing you're giving. Sometimes it's true. But you do it because you want to communicate something of your fondness and love for the person. You give it to say something to them that is hidden in your heart, but it's made manifest when you give it. A gift is meant to express the hidden parts of the heart, right? We know this. This is what we do. This is what we do. We give gifts in order to say something we can't say so they can see that. So what I should have been doing all that time with my grandmother, instead of just saying, thank you, Grandma, for, whatever this is, and then actually thank her for being who she is, for understanding something about her heart that's reflected in that. You love me. You thought about what I like, what would delight me. You gave special attention to that. And you came up with something that fits me perfectly. You must love me tremendously to understand me so well. You're communicating your heart through the gift. So the gift is kind of it's a great thing, but it's a vehicle to communicate the unseen parts of a loving heart. That's what it's all about. We need to thank through the gift to thank the giver, because that's what's being expressed. So we rejoice. I mean, that's just natural. This is not rocket science. So let me ask you some questions. Start with this one up here. Have you experienced any good in your life? All those who have experienced any good in their life. Okay. Some of us are too shy to raise our hands. Okay, then let me ask you this question. If there's only one who's good, where did that good that you enjoyed come from? God. Because he's the only source of good. He's the only source of good. Well, let me ask you another question then. Why would he send that good to you when you didn't love him? Why would he do that? So that we understand that he loves us. Grace. To be given what you don't deserve, what you don't merit. And in your fallenness as a rebellious mankind, and that's all of our pedigrees, by the way, as fallen mankind, God continues to give gifts like my grandma did to express his heart to us. And the goodness that you find in your life is him expressing his heart toward you and his understanding of you. Even while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Greatest gift ever. Why? Because God continues through creation to put out the message, there is a God. He's giving to you in the common blessings of every day. You're blessed by them. Pam and I in the front seat of that van were blessed. We saw Mount Rainier. He's doing this all the time. He hasn't stopped it because he said, sorry, you're a sinner. No sunsets for you. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. Why? Because he wants us to continue to understand his heart. That's why he said in the beginning of Romans 1, they've seen enough of creation to know who God is. And yet what did they do? They didn't thank him. They didn't even acknowledge it was God. Oh my gosh. Well, let me ask you another question. So what does that undeserving gift of good tell you about the heart of God? We already answered that. He loves us. And you see, that's the amazing thing. Creation that's good, that continues to bless throughout the generations of fallen mankind, continues to express like a megaphone to mankind, there is a God. He loves you. He'll bless you today. Won't you respond? Won't you respond? I'm talking thankfulness. And this is why in Romans 1, thankfulness is a key issue of judgment. Because God has given and communicated clearly his loving heart toward mankind. And mankind says, I don't think there is a God. I don't think there is a landlord. And anyway, I'm like the rest of mankind. We all deserve this. Are you starting to see what kind of a cutting edge thanklessness is? Well, let me ask you another question. Understanding that, what are the only two responses that we can make to understanding all these things? There's only two responses you have when you're blessed with these great good things from God. One's very positive, and we already looked at that from Deuteronomy. We rejoice and we thank. And the other one is to spurn and to ignore the Creator who continues to bless us. Growing up, especially when I got in adolescent time, I was given so much by my parents. I mean, after all, I had a roof over my head. My dad lent me his car so I could go to college. My mom fed me, like, incredibly so. My mom, by the way, on the side was a caterer, so she knew how to cook. And since there were 3 boys in the house, she knew how to cook a lot of food. So, but I come up to adolescence, because in adolescence there's something where you say, I think that I deserve this, or this has always been here, or you take it for granted, or there really is no continual thankfulness for the continual gifts. And I don't know how a parent, my mom and dad, I don't know how they can see such receptivity in those gifts and still not be thanked for it. And we've all experienced this kind of thing. We all give. And the response from that. And like I said, we need to not just thank and stop at the gift. We need to thank through the gift to the giver. You are so thoughtful, Mom. You make me food like no one else does in the universe. And every time you see me when I come home from college, you always ask me, are you hungry? Have you eaten? Mom, you're so considerate. Father, you are so considerate. You are so loving. You are so devoted. And how do I know? The gifts. The gifts. And once I acknowledge where the gifts come from, our hearts are just wired to be thankful. But if God's not there, and it looks like the gifts are always there, we don't thank. So this is why thankfulness is an extraordinary thermometer of our spiritual life. Because if you are thankful in every circumstance, which is what Paul writes to the church in Thessalonica, he says, if you're not thankful in every circumstance, you're forgetting something. You're forgetting that God himself is intimately involved in your life, and any good things you've experienced have come from him, and you don't deserve them. This is grace, and you don't deserve them. And when you have that context in terms of the frontal lobe of your thinking all the time, well, yeah, certain things can go bad. The car can break down and cost me $1,000. There's a lot of ways these things can go bad, but if there is any good in my life, that comes from God. And I need to thank him for it. And I need to understand that he is watching over me. He's the one who's for me. He's not against me. He's the one that has not pulled back his goodness gifts to me because I've been rebellious. He continues to leave them there so that those gifts themselves shout with words bigger than the universe, God still loves you. Thank through the gift to the giver. Okay. This is why this is so characteristic of believers. I'll call them redeemed, because redeemed is a purchase word. You know, redeem means something has been paid to purchase you. It was most often used when it came to purchasing slaves. They would be purchased, they'd be redeemed. It's a money transaction is what it is. So when you see the word redeemed, it's a money transaction. So you and I have been redeemed with not currency or not with silver or gold. Peter says in one of his letters, we have been redeemed by the precious blood of Christ himself. That's what it cost. So the redeemed have thankfulness as their primary character trait. Because you understand grace. You understand the gift of God. You understand that while we're yet sinners, he died for us. You understand everything about the gospel, and it's demonstrated outwardly in thankfulness. So just your barometer, if you want to understand how you're doing spiritually, ask yourself, how am I doing thankfully? Because the degree to which you forget all these essential pieces of the gospel, you're not thankful anymore. It's just what happens. So the redeemed understand and they embrace. What do they embrace? Well, they embrace the fact that there's a giver of all good, and that's God himself. They know that and they embrace that. They know that and they embrace that. There is a God, there is a landlord, there is a creator who made a good place that we benefit from, and he continues to want to bless you to this very moment. Remember Paul? We're back to Romans again. Paul said in chapter 8, you know, all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. God continues to create good in your life. There is a God who does this in our life. So the redeemed they embrace the fact that we have a God who's present and a God who's a giver all the time, because any good that I experience comes from him. Secondly, we understand this, that we are undeserving. These gifts are unmerited. That is, we couldn't buy them if we wanted to. They're given to us freely. We didn't seek them. They're unpayable. I can't pay them back. These are the good gifts of God. We realize not only that God is a great giver of good, but we realize that we don't deserve it. This is what the redeemed are constantly mindful of. How did this good come to me? How is God mindful of me? But he has. He loves you. He gives to you. And evidence of that, the flow of good things in your life. From the only one who is the source of good. Wow. And we don't deserve it. We also know the lovingness of God's heart, because gifts of good serve as glimpses into the giver's heart. They're meant to be tokens to express something that's unseen in here. That's why you give a gift. That's why you give a gift. And when you give a gift that's really appropriate, like you see something in the store and you go, oh, you know who would like this? My grandson would like this. Why? Because I know my grandson. This will delight him. This will delight him. And so when you put that together and they get this gift, they realize not only is it free and they didn't ask for it, they didn't seek for it, but they've got it anyway. And not only that, but it's perfectly suited. They know me. This one who loves me knows me. Now you take that from a parent and child relationship and you take it to a God to us relationship. This one knows me. He delights me. He doesn't have to do that. But he does. Why? Because that's his heart. That's his heart. So literally speaking, when you look at creation, a la Romans 1, when you look at creation, all of creation is meant to tell you someone loves you that's bigger in terms of their power and ability to delight you, and knows you intimately, even while you're sinning, and still loves you tremendously and delights you with the things he's left here. That's the big word grace. That's the big word grace. I do not deserve what God's brought to me, but he has. And he knows me. And still, he adds this all up to me. Lovingness of God's heart. The gifts of good serve as glimpses into the giver's heart. And the greatest of God's gifts of good was costly and of infinite value. The greatest of God's gift is the cross. And in the cross, we get a glimpse of the heart of God. John 3:16 starts with the glimpse of the heart of God. Why the cross? For God so loved the world that he gave. He gave the gift of his own son. Tremendously costly. In the gift of his son on the cross, we see this tremendously staggering cost. But a God who said, I know your need. I know you. I'm going to give you a gift that you haven't sought for, that you don't merit. But because I love you tremendously, I'm giving you this gift. Will you respond to this gift? The gospel itself is about a gift. And fallen mankind is about the repudiation of that gift. If you're a parent and you give gifts, and you repudiated that kind of costly gift repeatedly from a rebellious adolescent, how long would you put up with it? Well, God has put up with that with mankind since the beginning of creation. And yet he continues to give. God so loved the world that he gave his son. So what is the response of the redeemed? You know all these things. This is the gospel that you've accepted, that you've responded to. So what is your response to all of that? Thankfulness. 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 Rejoice in every situation. You have benefited so far beyond your merit. And God has given to you. And he continues to give to you. He continues to give to you. There is a God who loves you. There is a God who knows you. There is a God who solved your basic primary need, and that was need for the taking away of sin, so that you can join God. Thankfulness just isn't a nice thing you do. Thankfulness is the very response from a redeemed mankind. The very response from a redeemed mankind. So it's actually the character of the redeemed. Thankfulness is the very character of the redeemed. So much so that if you go to the middle one about judgment, if God senses no thankfulness in the person he's judging, he knows that they've missed it. They've missed the entire gospel. They've missed the entire gospel. You know, we don't know much about how judgment's going to happen. Many times we paint pictures of, well, you're standing in front of St. Peter. Well, that's not in the Bible. But there will be a moment, I think, and this is speculation on my part, there is a moment where perhaps God could say, well, here we are at judgment, Jim. So why should I let you into my kingdom? I mean, I don't know if this is going to happen, because God doesn't really need to ask me. He knows the answer to this question. This is more a rhetorical question for me to think. And I can say, well, I don't deserve to be here. I couldn't buy my way into this place. There's no issue of merit on my part that I'm so great that I can presume that I can be here. But I got to tell you this. Since I understood the greatness of the gift you gave to me in Christ, I responded in thankfulness and joy. And I'll never get past that. There's a thankful one. Let's keep going. See, thankfulness is so primary to the character of the redeemed that when this thought came to me, I had to stand up out of my chair and walk around for a while. I mean, really, it shocked me. Biblically, thankfulness, which is why Paul is absolutely right in opening Romans 1 by saying, the wrath of God is revealed upon people who are not thankful. Wow. This just isn't my mom saying, what do you say? Oh, thank you. Like God saying, what do you say, Jim? Well, thank you. Has nothing to do with that. It's really a realization in the gospel message that's been aimed at your heart, that there is a God who loves you and who's solved your primary problem through a very sacrificial and costly gift, the gift of the death of Christ on the cross. That gift. And when mankind thumbs his nose at that gift, God says, well, you don't seem to be thankful because you don't get it. You don't get the gospel and you haven't embraced it. Thankfulness. We got to wrap this up. Some closing thoughts. And these are just random closing thoughts that came as I was meditating through this and praying about it. You know, a gift is a visible token of the heart's invisible fondness and love. How often do we get stuck on the gift rather than the giver? And the gift itself is a medium in a sense. It's a token. It's a vehicle to express the fondness and the love of someone, right? But I got to tell you, when we talk about Thanksgiving from a secular sense, it's more like a statement of appreciation. Oh yeah, well I appreciate this. I appreciate this sunset. Oh yeah, I appreciate this hot turkey. Very nice, very nice. I appreciate being in a warm house when it's really cool outside. These are just appreciations. These are not thankfulnesses. That's why at the beginning this morning, I don't know if you saw, there was a G.K. Chesterton quote I put up about how miserable atheists must be when they're incredibly thankful, but they have no one to thank. Thankfulness has to go through the gift and to the giver. Thankfulness to the giver. If it doesn't, then it's just appreciation. And that's a different kind of thing. The gift is meant to communicate the heart of the giver. And if you're a giver, if you're a person who gives gifts, you understand this innately. You understand this. Well, that's coming from God. That's a way in which you're made in God's image. You communicate your heart through gifts of good. Okay, how about another one? Think about this. Think about your personal reaction when someone receives your gift, a gift that you give, and acknowledges your heart rather than just the gift. Has that ever happened to you? What I'm saying is when they actually succeed at thanking through the gift and thanking the heart of the person who gives it. I'm not really good at this, but it sounds something like this. And you can all tutor me in how to do this. But it sounds something like this. Oh, you are so thoughtful. You were thinking of me when you were doing this. You know who I am. This is just so fitting for me. I mean, you're always a giving kind of. I don't do this really well. You got to show me how to do this. But you see how I'm not just talking about, oh, this is perfect. I've been waiting for this for years. Okay, thank you. Bye. Right? It's not that. That's focused on the gift. It's not focused on the giver. But in secular culture right now, thankfulness is about being thankful for the thing, not being thankful for the source of the thing. See the difference in that? Thankfulness to the giver. And that gift is meant to communicate a hidden aspect of the heart. You need to jump past the gift. I mean, appreciate it, but then jump past that and be thankful for the giver and what it's expressing, what they give. Okay, another random thought. I was thinking about the fact that even God's rules, and I'm talking about the law here, right? Don't murder, don't steal, don't do adultery, all that kind of stuff. Even God's rules, the law, provide the good of peace and order in contrast to the chaos that fallen mankind would impose. Did you know that the Ten Commandments is a gift? Really? I thought it sounded kind of restrictive myself. Why can't I go down Main Street at 75 miles an hour? That would really be a high for me, especially if it's on my motorcycle. These repressive laws, they always bind me and restrict me. They keep me from having fun, toy on laws. Yeah. But God said, hey, you want to have a real society that you're going to enjoy? Let me give you a good gift. You know what my good gift is? Don't murder each other. Don't steal from each other. Don't commit adultery with each other. That's my gift to you. And you know what would happen if he hadn't given us the gift of something as sterile as that law? You would have chaos and anarchy and the worst and the most powerful, worst people in the world completely making your life hellish. That's what you'd have. That's what you'd have. So even in God's restrictive law to us, he's giving to us an extraordinary gift of peace and order in a world that would naturally evolve into chaos and death. That's what you'd get. Good gifts? Yeah. Yeah. Random thought. And this is my last of my random thoughts. The cross is the ultimate gift of God's heart made visible. Huh? You understand the love of God because of that? The cross is the ultimate gift of God's heart made visible, and the resurrection is the ultimate invitation to join with that heart now revealed in the cross. You have been purchased by the precious blood of Christ. The most astounding gift of good in the history of the universe. And because you understand the loving kindness of God because of that sacrificial gift, you say, I'm all in. I'm all in with this God who would love me like that. Even while I was sinning, he did this. That's the gospel. And that's how we respond in thankfulness to a God who knows you and who gives to you and gives you the ultimate good of that. And then the resurrection. And then the resurrection comes. And what does the resurrection promise? That this God who demonstrated his love so powerfully in the cross, come and die on our behalf, we can actually now join with that giver of such a good thing in life that finds definition beyond anything we ever sought or ever could imagine. And the resurrection is the promise of life with that tremendously loving heart of God himself. Those of us who've come to Christ have understood all of this. And thankfulness is a barometer of the fact that you appreciate that, you understand that, you get that, and you've responded to the giver of the great gift. And now we anticipate living life with him because of that. Starting now. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. All things. You know, and I could debate God about some of those things. So God, how can this be good? Have you ever done that? It might not go like this, but. And then you go through it and it's not comfortable, right? And then years later you look back and go, wow, okay. I think I'm beginning to get it. I'm beginning to understand why that was a good thing from God's perspective. But boy, I got to tell you, when I was in the midst of it, I couldn't see it. I know. I'm with you there. What you need to understand is that God's loving kindness never ends. Never ends. Even in the midst of circumstances that really look like they're going upside down. You got to remind yourself that there's this God who's paid this tremendous gift for you, that to redeem you back, to purchase you back, and then invited you to have life with him through the resurrection. There's life after death. He's done all these things. And so the circumstance right now might be suboptimal, but you got to understand the loving kindness of God hasn't stopped. Which is why the most resounding, rejoicing, thankful phrase in the entire Old Testament, which is put to music over and over and over in the Old Testament, is give thanks to the Lord. Why? Because he is good. And his loving kindness is everlasting. Was that thanking through the gift to the giver? Yes. Give thanks to the Lord because he's good. He's good. Oh. Okay, so I come back to 1957. And I regret all those years that I lived with my parents, and their loving kindness was so manifest over and over through when I was 3 years old in this picture to all the way up through when I was a jerk adolescent. And I was consuming so much of the good gifts of my parents. And I regret the fact that I never spoke my heart to them in saying, how you must love me. Your gifts have never stopped. If I ever said that to my mom, she would crumple in tears. So that's just my admonition to you today. Thank through the gift to the person. God's gifts to us are meant for us to admire and love who he is. The gifts that you receive from people are meant for you to admire and fall in love with the hearts that conceived the gift to start with. Think through to the person. So that's my challenge to you at Thanksgiving. Think through the gift and think to the heart of the person. Now this takes some discipline. because you need to be able to sit there in this moment and say, what is this gift telling me about the giver? And then tell him. And if the gift does not come from a person but comes from God, right? Either it's what we see or what we experience. I mean, then you need to consciously stop and think, God, what are you telling me about this gift to me? And 9 times out of 10, if you put just an ounce of thought into it and ask the Holy Spirit that resides in you, what is God trying to say through this creation that shouts with words that cannot be extinguished, that are heard all over the earth? Normally, what the Holy Spirit will say to you is, Jim, it's grace. It's grace. Have you missed it all this time? It's grace. God did it because he loves you, and you don't deserve it. It's grace. Okay, let's quit. Father, you are such a good Father in so many ways. And your hand is evident all around us in good things that you plan around us, delightful surprises that you bring to us. And Lord, at night we stare at the stars in the sky, and we're overwhelmed with your majesty and with your power and with your size. You're big. And yet there's something about the artwork of those stars that just causes us not only to tremble, but to fall in love with a God that big who would see us. What is man that you would think anything of him? And yet you have. The stars are so delicate, and they're so attractive. And I don't understand why my heart would say that, except for the fact that you made me in your image. And so I appreciate the things you make. And Father, as we stare at the sun when it goes down and we see that orange horizon, we're thrilled. The grace of God. And when we turn around those blinding corners in our life and come face to face with Mount Rainier's, we're staggered. And all we can think of was, he didn't have to do this. And he certainly didn't have to do it for me. I don't deserve it. The grace of God, the loving kindness of God. Sometimes I wonder if you're giddy in how you delight to surprise us with your good. So Lord, this season as we're coming into Thanksgiving, I pray that you would, through your Spirit, give us an understanding about how to think through the gift and then to the giver. Not only you, but those around us who surround us with goodness and loving kindness, that we would stop and reflect on these hearts that up to that point might have been kind of shaded and unknowable, but now made manifest and known through the nature of the gift. And that we would appreciate the givers of these gifts. And above all, Father, that we would appreciate you as the giver of all good things. And you are. Every good and perfect gift comes from the Father. So thank you for this season. Change our hearts through your Spirit, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.